Let's take a look at the cardiac conduction system. So when we say cardiac conduction system, we're really talking about groups of autorhythmic cardiac muscle cells. We have two main groups of autorhythmic cells in the heart, plus we have other groups that form sort of an electrical wiring that run between the main groups. The autorhythmic cardiac muscle cells can initiate their own depolarization and action potentials, and they do this in basically two specialized areas of the myocardium. We have the sinoatrial node, also known as the SA node, and the atrioventricular node, also known as the AV node. The SA node is located in the superior portion of the right atrium. You can see that on the picture here. And the AV node is located sort of right between the atria and the ventricles, but a little bit more on the atria side. And it's located more towards the right atrium. So those are just two groups of autorhythmic cardiocytes in the heart. Once a node fires, the impulse or depolarization or action potential, whatever you want to call it, is propagated to the neighboring cardiocyte through those intercalated discs. But the impulse, the depolarization, the action potential, whatever you want to call it, from one node cannot cross all of the entire myocardium. We talked about this previously. We said that the cardiac skeleton prevents the electrical components, the action potentials, from traveling from the atria down to the ventricles. So the fibrous skeleton, one of its main location points is to separate the atria from the ventricles. And this is why both the atria and the ventricles have their own node for stimulating action potentials. The SA node is going to start up action potentials for the atria, and the AV node is going to start up action potentials for the ventricles. Let's trace the pathway of electrical activity through the heart. So we're going to start with the sinoatrial node, or the SA node, that's in the right atrium. These autorhythmic cells will initiate an action potential that spreads to all of the atria, and you can see that here in the picture. Okay? Once that action potential spreads throughout the atrial myocardium, that will cause the atria to contract. But we're just concentrating on the electrical activity. So it goes SA node, atrial myocardium, and then it stops there because the action potential can't cross that cardiac skeleton. So in order to get the ventricles to contract, what happens next is the AV node will self-depolarize and start action potentials. So the AV node will then send action potentials down this structure here, which is called the atrioventricular bundle, also known as the AV bundle, also known as the bundle of His. So these are specialized autorhythmic cells that help to very quickly propagate that action potential down the septum of the interventricular septum. The bundle of His, or AV bundle, splits into smaller fibers that further propagate the action potential, and these are referred to as Purkinje fibers. And the Purkinje fibers have the job of basically spreading the action potential all along the walls of the ventricle. So at this point, the electrical activity went from the AV node to the AV bundle and then to the Purkinje fibers. Now the electrical activity is in the ventricular myocardium, and that's what will cause the ventricular myocardium to contract. Let's take a look at the cardiac conduction system using a different set of images. In these images, the yellow structures are representing the autorhythmic cardiocytes that are initiating and propagating the action potential. The purple color denotes the depolarization and contraction of the atria or ventricles. So we'll start over here at number 1, right? Basically nothing's happening here. So I guess we really should start at number 2. In number 2, we can see that the SA node is firing, right? You can see that the purple depolarization is just barely starting to spread to the atria. Now over here at number 3, we can see that the entire atria have depolarized, and that causes the atria to contract. You can see how the atria look a little bit squished now, right? The next thing that's going to happen is the AV node will fire, And once the AV node fires, that electrical activity is spread down the AV bundle and then into the Purkinje fibers. Once the electrical activity is in the Purkinje fibers, it very quickly spreads to the entire ventricular myocardium, causing the ventricles to contract. You can see how the ventricles here look a little bit more squished, and those are the ventricles. That's representing the ventricles contracting. We can look at the electrical activity of the heart in another way. An EKG is a graphical representation of the heart's electrical activity. Basically, an EKG is showing us the depolarizations and repolarizations that occur during the cardiac muscle cell action potential. So this is a very idealistic, simplified version of a normal EKG. And you can see we have a blip here that's called the P wave. And then we have a very tall spike, and this is called the QRS complex. And then we have another blip here, and that's called the T wave. So each of these is representing either a depolarization or a repolarization of the myocardium. The P wave is representing atrial depolarization. So that's the electrical activity traveling through the atria that will lead to atrial contraction. So this is the atria depolarizing, and then around here is when the atria are contracting. The QRS complex is representing actually two things. It represents the voltage caused by ventricular depolarization, but also at the same time, the atria are repolarizing. So both those things are happening at the same time. So their electrical activity is combined as the QRS complex on an EKG. Once the ventricles depolarize, they will contract. So around here is when the ventricles are contracting. The T wave, as you might have guessed, is the electrical representation of the ventricles repolarizing. And then this will repeat over and over again for every beat of the heart. Cardiac arrhythmias occur when the heart beats in some sort of abnormal way. And there are different cardiac arrhythmias, and we're just going to talk about a few of them. And these can all be seen on an EKG. So the prefix tachy means fast. So tachycardia is the heart beating too fast. And on an EKG, the P wave, QRS complex, T wave, each grouping of those will be really close together during tachycardia. We see the opposite with bradycardia. So brady means too slow. If the heart's beating too slow, those segments on the EKG will be really far apart. Fibrillation is the heart beating too fast plus beating irregularly. So it's sort of like tachycardia with a bunch of other stuff happening that makes it so that the heart contraction is very uncoordinated. And this is not a good thing to have. Asystole is referring to the heart not beating. So asystole on an EKG looks like a flat line. Also, something you don't want. Defibrillator, which you're probably all familiar with. You probably walked by one in the hallway at school, or maybe saw one, I think they have them like everywhere now, at restaurants and stuff. So defibrillators are basically electrically charged paddles that allow you to apply charge to the heart, which will stop an abnormal rhythm. And basically what it does is it allows the heart to reset, and the SA node gets a chance to try to set up a new regular rhythm. You've probably also heard of artificial pacemakers. So artificial pacemakers are used when arrhythmias become a chronic problem. So if someone's constantly having a problem with arrhythmias, they might have a pacemaker installed. The pacemaker is going to deliver impulses to the heart muscle to make sure that the heart's contracting and pumping blood effectively. Some pacemakers are set up to provide constant stimulation to the heart, while others will only fire as needed. And some pacemakers actually already have defibrillators built in, so if the heart does start experiencing asystole or fibrillation, it will automatically fire like a defibrillator and allow the heart to reset.